and welcome back to the Thriving Families Parent Workshop number 2. My name is Kemi Wright and I will take you through this video. So today we're going to go through reviewing magic. Hopefully you remember from the last video some of the points that we talked about, and we're also going to talk around specific strategies for how you build the motivation and confidence in children towards physical activity. And we'll review a few videos to pull out a few points around strategies for communication, how the environment affects the individual, and also creating this sense of mastery, and how all of those things influence magic, and how we might be able to tap into certain things to hopefully improve the magic that we have with our kids when we're physically active. So hopefully you remember from last week, we talked about magic, and the magic stands for a few different things. The M stands for motivation, and that's the idea that we should focus on activities that the children or the child enjoys, and if they enjoy it, then hopefully we're tapping into those good forms of motivation, and we know that that's what we want in terms of long-term behaviour, and we want to improve those good forms of motivation through our interactions in physical activity. The A stands for autonomy, and that stands for, that means that we want to try and give, where possible, the children choices in the activities that they complete or in the way that they complete the activity, but we also want to provide reasoning behind maybe the choices we make, or help them to understand that why maybe their choice was a little bit harder than a different thing. And you remember from last video I used the example of picking a ball. Throwing and catching a large ball is sometimes easier than throwing and catching, say, a golf ball or a tennis ball. So if your child does pick a smaller ball, providing that reasoning behind that, sure, we can give it a try, but it might be a little bit more difficult. G stands for this idea of grit, and that is what we want to try and encourage children to do is embrace the challenges that they come up against, and grow from maybe their mistakes from the past. So if they weren't successful in physical activity the first time, then trying to encourage them to look at it from a new angle, or try a new strategy in order to be successful this time. And we want to try and create that sense of resilience in the child. I stands for interconnected. So that is the idea that we want children to feel connected to each other, to their peers, to the other children in their thriving group, but also to you and within your family itself. We know that interconnected taps into that need of relatedness from self-determination theory, which I spoke about in the first video. And then the C stands for confidence, and we know that from the first study, confidence was something that children with poor movement skills really struggle with, and we know that they have lower confidence than their typically developing peers. So we really want to encourage and provide a supportive and positive environment so that hopefully we can improve their confidence, not just here within the interactions that you have with your child, and not just in thriving, but hopefully that we give them confidence to go out and try new strategies when they do come up against challenging situations, maybe at school or in an environment that they're less accustomed to. And we know if, we remember from last week, if we do a really good job of tapping into the A, the I and the C, then we're going to go a really long way to sort of satisfying those 3 needs from self-determination theory, and wrapping it all up, hopefully we can bring a bit of magic to their physical activity every day. So how do we specifically improve the motivation and confidence in kids? The magic principles can be influenced by lots of different things, and we're going to talk today around how communication impacts them, how the environment impacts that, and also in terms of modelling and what the different sources of modelling are and how they can sometimes impact in some of the magic principles. So we're going to go on and talk about motivation first, and we'll go through each of the magic principles. So the M, the A, the G, the I, and the C. So motivation, it's a really broad overarching term, and you remember from the first video that the best kinds of motivations is when we do things for intrinsic reasons, or those good forms of motivation, because we inherently enjoy it, because we see value in the task and we want to improve in a certain aspect, and not because we get some form of external reward from that. It's really important that when you're interacting with your child and doing physical activity with them, that we emphasise enjoyment, because we know that has a really strong link to those good forms of motivation, and not just promoting enjoyment within the child, but really focusing on making sure that we tell them how much we're enjoying the process, or we're enjoying doing physical activities with them, so that they understand that we're also having a good time, and that can help improve those good forms of motivation. So the key take home for motivation is that we emphasise fun over frustration. If there is a day where you come back and you're really busy and you maybe perhaps aren't able to give the child the time to instill all the magic principles, maybe you're better off just doing something fun. Be silly, have a game with them, because you're working on improving that aspect of fun and those good forms of motivation. Maybe that isn't the day when the child is really tired or had a really tough day at school, to start to do the activities that maybe are a little bit more difficult and might take a little bit more time to unpack and need much more input in terms of building their motivation and their confidence. So really make sure that above all else, we're trying to instill fun in terms of physical activities, so that they get that connection that physical activity isn't bad, that it can be fun and interactive. When we talk about autonomy, I've sort of talked about this a little bit in the first video. It's the idea that we give choices and reasoning behind it. So certainly as an instructor, reasoning is something that I sometimes forget. I say, oh, we're just going to do throwing and catching, we're going to use this ball, but I forget to say why we're going to start with that ball, or why we might pick a certain activity first. So when we are interacting with children, it's really important to give them choices where we can, but also provide the reasoning behind it. And communication is a really great strategy that we can use in terms of encouraging autonomy. So that might be, as I said, giving them choices in what ball they want to kick, where should we set up the goals, how should we set up this activity. So what we're going to do now is we're going to view a video of an interaction between a dad and his two kids, and they're going to do a throwing and catching task. What I want you to have a little think about is, how would you change the environment, and how would you change the interaction, perhaps the communication that he uses, to encourage more motivation and autonomy within that interaction.
Alright guys, let's throw, play catch to each other. That's it. Oh, good job. Well done. Keep going.
Okay, so now you've viewed the video, hopefully you've had a little bit of a think about how they could have changed the activity to be slightly different, or to encourage autonomy and motivation more. Some of the things that you might have picked out is that the parent wasn't very motivating and wasn't very excited to be doing it. He kind of just said, all right, we're going to do throwing and catching. And if anyone says anything in an unfun way, then you're probably less likely to do it. So he could have been a little bit more enthusiastic. The way you set up the game, you could set it up differently so that the dad is involved in the throwing and catching, so they're sort of passing in a triangle. They could have done things differently in terms of giving the child choices of which ball they might want to pick, and making sure each of the child has a choice. And they could have done things like changing what you say. So even though you think maybe you're giving positive praise, just saying good job, awesome, well done all the time, even if the child doesn't catch successfully, maybe isn't the best in terms of instilling those good forms of motivation. I know that we know that if you hear someone just saying good job, all right, awesome work, even if you aren't successful, when they say it when you are successful and you do catch the ball, it probably doesn't hold the same weight or the same meaning. So what we're going to do now is watch the video again, and I want you to pick up on some of the good things that he's done, and then has he improved in his interaction, and what else might you change if that was your children that you were doing the throwing and catching task with.
Alright guys, we're going to do a throwing and catching again. Nate, do you want to pick a ball? Right, good choice. Well done guys. Oh, come on Nate, well done. Good effort. Let's try again. Oh, unlucky, buddy. Good effort, but try again. Come on. That's it. Good catch. Awesome catch. Terrific catch. Well done. Oh, he's an alien. Alright, Jake, would you like to pick a ball now? Alright, let's try with this ball. It's a little tricky, but you can do it. That's it. Awesome, good try, buddy. Oh, unlucky. Good effort, bud. Well done.
Yeah.
Oh, unlucky. Oh, awesome catch.
Okay, so what did the parent do really well in this video? Well, there were several things that he sort of improved on from the very first video that we watched. He was definitely more encouraging. He gave lots of positive feedback. If you look at the children during the video, they seem more engaged, they look like they're having more fun, so we know that that taps into their motivation and hopefully their good forms of motivation. He touched on autonomy, so he gave each of the boys a choice of the ball that they wanted to pick. And not only did he give them a choice, but he also gave some reasoning behind. So when one of them picked a really small ball, he said, that ball's a little bit small, it might be a little bit tricky, but I think we can do it. So he was providing some confidence in their abilities, or verbalising his confidence in their abilities, but also giving them a little bit of background saying, you know, it might be a little bit tricky, but I think we can do it, which is really important. So what we're going to do now is just pause the video, have a little bit of time to think and fill out your individual action plan. So you'll see there's some little lead-ins there around motivation and autonomy. So just fill out the first two in thinking about how you might encourage the motivation and also autonomy around a particular task or when you're doing physical activity with your child.